Welcome back to Today in News and Views on YouTube. It's Derek, your host, and we're diving into some fascinating articles you sent in, all about Kristi Noem, the new Secretary of Homeland Security. Samantha's here to help us break it all down.
It's a big one, Derek. We're talking immigration, national security, political maneuvering, even some surprising local impacts.
Right. The Senate just confirmed Noem. It was 59 to 34.
Right.
But 6 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote with the Republicans. Samantha, what do you think is going on there?
That's pretty unusual, especially for someone so closely tied to Trump. It suggests that Noam might have some wider appeal than expected, at least for this particular role.
So you think this is like some political strategy by the Democrats?
It could be. One of the articles you sent in quotes Democratic Senator Andy Kim from New Jersey, and he explains his vote. He says he actually disagrees with Noam on a lot of issues, but he believes that working with her is a better strategy than just opposing her outright. He specifically mentions disaster response as a shared priority.
Interesting. So maybe they're thinking they can get more done by working with her from the inside.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to influence things from within.
Okay. Before we get into Noam's plans, though, can you give our viewers a quick rundown of who she is and where she's coming from?
Absolutely. Noam was a 2-term governor of South Dakota, and before that, she served as a U.S. representative. She gained national attention, though, for really strongly supporting Trump's policies, especially on things like COVID restrictions and immigration. She even went so far as to send South Dakota National Guard troops to the southern border. And, get this, the whole thing was funded by a private donor.
Wow, that's definitely taking a stand. So now she's the head of Homeland Security, which of course has huge implications for immigration policy in this country. Samantha, what stood out to you from her confirmation hearings about what she plans to do?
Well, a few things jumped out at me, Derek. First, she's clearly committed to following Trump's overall immigration agenda.
Okay.
That means emphasizing things like stricter border control, making it harder to seek asylum in the U.S. Right.
She specifically mentioned bringing back the Remain in Mexico policy.
Remain in Mexico. What was that again?
Basically, it requires asylum seekers to stay in Mexico while their cases are being processed in U.S. courts.
Right.
Which can take, months or even years.
I remember that. And that was very controversial because of all the safety concerns for the people stuck waiting in Mexico.
Exactly.
So Noam bringing that back is probably going to cause some problems.
Oh, absolutely.
But if she got those Democratic votes, does that mean they support this policy too?
It's not so straightforward. Remember what we were talking about with Senator Kim's statement about working with Noam?
Right.
So maybe some Democrats are hoping that by collaborating with her, they can sort of moderate her approach to things like this.
Okay. So there's like a lot more going on behind the scenes than we realize. It's kind of like a political thriller, Samantha.
Absolutely.
And this confirmation is just the first chapter. Right. There's still a lot more to uncover. And it gets even more interesting when we look at what's been happening back in Noam's home state in South Dakota.
Oh, yeah. Hold on, everyone.
Yeah.
Things are about to get really interesting because we're going to dive into some surprising contradictions between Noam's national agenda and what's actually happening on the ground back in South Dakota. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Today in News and Views, everyone. We're digging deeper into Kristi Noem's confirmation. And Samantha, before the break, you hinted at some pretty interesting contradictions between all her tough talk on immigration and, what's actually happening in her home state. What's going on there?
It's fascinating, Derek. South Dakota actually has the lowest unemployment rate in the whole country right now.
Really?
Yeah, only 1.9%. But that actually creates a unique challenge.
How can low unemployment be a problem? That sounds like a good thing.
Well, when unemployment is that low, businesses really struggle to find workers.
Yeah.
And in South Dakota, guess who's filling a lot of those jobs?
Oh, come on, Samantha. Don't leave me hanging.
Migrants, the very same people that Noam is promising to crack down on nationally, are actually essential for South Dakota businesses to survive.
Wow. So her policies could actually backfire and hurt her own state's economy. Isn't that a little ironic?
It definitely raises some questions. One of the articles you sent from AP News really highlights this tension. It quotes a community activist in South Dakota. They say, "Who's going to milk the cows? If the Latinos don't, nobody will."
Wow. That really puts things into perspective. So on one hand, you have all these migrants who are worried about being deported, and on the other, you have businesses who are worried about losing their workforce. It's like, A no-win situation.
It's a tough situation for sure, Derek. Very complex, no easy solutions. But it's not the only thing keeping Noam busy. She's been active in other areas of Homeland Security too.
Oh, right. I saw on her social media that she was in New York City earlier this week. What was she doing there?
She participated in an ICE operation. Yeah. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It seems like they're stepping up enforcement under her leadership. They're reporting over 900 arrests every single day recently.
900 a day. That's a
Yes.
huge increase. It seems like she's really moving quickly to put those tough policies into practice.
Absolutely. And she's also announced plans to freeze grants to some non-governmental organizations, too.
Wait, hold on, Samantha. Why is she freezing grants? And who is going to be affected by that?
Well, from what I can gather from the sources you sent in, she seems to be targeting groups that have been critical of Trump's immigration policies or groups that provide support to migrants.
Right.
It's still early, but this move is already generating a lot of controversy.
Yeah, I can imagine. So she's definitely taking a pretty hardline approach to immigration, both at the border and within the country. But what about those other areas that she's responsible for at Homeland Security, like cybersecurity, disaster response, and counterterrorism? What'd she say about all that?
She's highlighted all of those things as top priorities, Derek, especially cybersecurity. She seems to be taking a pretty hawkish approach across the board, really emphasizing strong national defense and a willingness to, use force to protect the country.
Hawkish, huh? Yeah, that sounds about right, given her background and her close ties to Trump. So it seems like Noam is all about America first when it comes to just about everything. But how does all of this fit into the bigger political landscape? What does her confirmation actually tell us about where U.S. immigration policy is headed? What can we expect to see happen over the next few years?
That's the big question, isn't it, Derek? And it's something we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We'll take a step back and look at the broader implications of Noam's appointment and think about what it might mean for the future of immigration in America.
Sounds like we have a lot to cover. Stay tuned, viewers. We'll be right back with the conclusion of our deep dive into Kristi Noem and the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome back to Today in News and Views, everyone. We've covered a lot of ground on Kristi Noem's confirmation. We talked about her background, how she got those Democratic votes, her policy plans, even how this could all affect her home state. So, Samantha, for our viewers, what are the big takeaways here? What does all of this mean for, the future of immigration in the U.S.?
It's complicated, Derek. It's not a simple answer. Remember that tension we were discussing in South Dakota? Super low unemployment.
Right.
But, a really heavy reliance on those migrant workers.
Yeah.
That same dynamic is actually playing out all over the country.
So are you saying that all of Noem's, tough talk on immigration could actually backfire and hurt the whole U.S. economy?
It's a real possibility, Derek. If businesses all over the country are depending on migrant labor to function, and Noam's policies make it way harder for those workers to stay in the U.S., well, it could definitely create, labor shortages and end up hurting the economy.
And what about the human side of this? The people who are already here, who might be affected by all these new policies?
That's a really important question. One of the articles you sent in focused specifically on the anxiety among migrant communities in South Dakota, and they're terrified about being separated from their families and, just losing their ability to make a living.
It's really sad to think about. But, if Noem got support from some of those Democrats, does that mean they're okay with all of that happening?
Not necessarily. Remember what Senator Kim was saying about, trying to find that common ground?
Uh-huh.
It's possible those Democrats are hoping they can, influence her from the inside.
Right.
Maybe push for some more humane policies or, find ways to protect those more vulnerable populations that might be affected.
So, Samantha, what's your best guess? What do you think is going to happen in the next few years? Is this a sign that America is, closing its doors to immigrants for good?
It's hard to say for certain, Derek. Noam being confirmed definitely signals a change, right?
Yeah.
It shows we're moving towards stricter enforcement of our immigration laws.
Uh-huh.
And definitely a harder line on immigration overall. But things can change, Public opinion can shift, and we might get new leaders, and, policies can always be reversed.
So you're saying that there's still hope. Maybe we'll see a more compassionate approach to immigration in the future.
Absolutely, Derek. And that's really where all of our amazing viewers come in. Stay informed, stay engaged, and make sure your voices are being heard. The future of immigration policy in this country is still being written, and we all have a part to play in shaping it.
Samantha, that's a great point. And I think our deep dive today has given everyone a lot to think about. We've really gone in depth and explored this complex issue. We've talked about the potential consequences of Noam's policies and really the importance of staying informed and engaged.
Exactly, Derek. This is just the start of the conversation.
And on that note, we want to thank you, our viewers, for sending us all those interesting articles. You guys are the reason we do this show. So please keep those questions coming. And don't forget to subscribe to Today in News and Views for more deep dives into the news that matters most to you. We'll see you next time.